the digestive system in relation to nutrition. Well, I'm willing to bet you probably have an idea of how that works. Let's see if we can expand on that and add a few pieces. So digestion, when does it really start? When you put food in your mouth? Nah, it's before that. Digestive processes can actually start when you see food, smell food, or even if you think about food. You might think of that time where you're thinking about this favorite meal you enjoy, and all of a sudden your stomach starts to gurgle, you realize you're hungry. Well, that's the start of the digestive process. Your entire digestive tract is getting ready to receive the food and break it down for the nutrients to power your body. So really, the whole thing goes from mouth through a very long tube all the way down through the anus. It's really one continuous tube. Now, there are other organs that come off the sides that don't actually have food traveling through them, but we'll touch on those briefly. The idea is to give an idea of how each of these organs relates to our nutrition that we're talking about. Now, the entire lining from mouth, again through anus, is going to be lined by a mucosal membrane. This mucosal membrane is going to have different purposes depending on where it is in the pathway. Some purposes are going to be protective, for example, in your mouth and esophagus. Some purposes are more for digestion and for absorption and for breakdown. When you get down into your small intestines, that's really focusing on absorption. But the entire pathway, though, has muscle ringing around the pathway. The idea is you have to be able to propel your food down, once you swallow, the rest of the way. Get down into the stomach, you start with some enzymes. Small intestines, a whole lot more enzymes. So let's start that journey through the GI tract, or your digestive system. You can start right in your mouth. Your teeth are aligned for mechanical breakdown. You chew your food, at least most of it. When you're chewing, you're taking that large chunk of food and smashing it and grinding it into smaller pieces. By making it smaller like that, you're increasing the surface area to aid in the enzymes and absorption working later. Your saliva. Do you ever try swallowing when your mouth is very dry? It's not that easy. The saliva not only provides lubrication, but there's also a little bit of an enzyme in there to start breaking down carbohydrates. All right, you swallow. Well, swallowing is voluntary, right? You think about it, you swallow. Well, that's half right. You think about swallowing and you swallow, but then the second half of swallowing is involuntary. Once it gets to a certain point, you can't stop it. It just keeps on going. So you swallow that mouthful of food. It heads down into the pharynx, down into the esophagus, that long tube running down. The food is now referred to as a bolus. It's the chewed up food that you swallowed, called a bolus. If it's solid food, it takes about 4 to 8 seconds to get down to the stomach. Liquid, about 1 second. I say about because there's always that really sticky, thick food, think peanut butter, that might take a little bit longer to go down your throat. But once you get down, all the way down the esophagus, you're down in the stomach. Now, the stomach itself is basically a large muscular bag. It's meant to collect the food that you swallow, mix it up with some digestive enzymes, some hydrochloric acid, and start the breakdown process. It will then allow for a little bit of that food, called chyme now. This broken down food, mixed with digestive enzymes, hydrochloric acid, is referred to as chyme, is sent down into the small intestines. Your small intestines is actually 3 different parts, or 3 different segments. The first segment is going to be the duodenum. Second segment is going to be the jejunum. Third segment is going to be the ileum. Now, each segment has its own special purpose, But overall, the small intestines is where the majority of your absorption will occur. Reason being, your pancreas is producing a lot of digestive enzymes that are then being sent into the start of the duodenum. That allows for breakdown of your carbohydrates, breakdown of your lipids, breakdown of your proteins, all into their basic building blocks. Carbohydrates, you're breaking them down into monosaccharides, the most common being glucose. Lipids, well, we're primarily looking at triglycerides, 3 fatty acids, and then a glycerol backbone. And then we have our proteins, broken down to the individual amino acids. All those are being absorbed through the mucosal lining of the small intestines. And once that occurs, those absorbed components are being sent into the bloodstream for transport throughout the body. But you can't absorb everything. There are some things that still just aren't going to be absorbed. And those have to be moved along down the length of the small intestines. Now, the way the small intestines works is referred to as segmentation. It's going to be a piece will close. You end up with a little bit of a bolus here, a little bit of a chunk, and then all of a sudden that gets mixed in half, next gets mixed in half. So the food keeps being sent back and forth, until it's all mixed and mushed together. But that process slowly transports it the length of the small intestines. From the small intestines, you end up in the large intestines, also known as the colon. Now, in the colon, you're not really absorbing any nutrients. You're absorbing water. This is where the majority of the water is being reabsorbed. Because you've added all these enzymes, all this liquid into that digesting food, you've got to pull it back out, otherwise you'll cause dehydration. So you're causing all this absorption of water in the large intestines, as well as the fact that there is tons of bacteria here. All this bacteria helps break down what you couldn't, but it also aids us in some vitamin production. Well, fine, so now we're in the large intestines. By this point, this food's been sitting around quite a while. Your stomach, it was there for a couple hours. Depends on if it was carbohydrates, fast, or if it was more lipid-based, slower. But a couple hours there. Then we're down into the small intestines. That's 3 to 6 hours. Again, depends on the composition of what you ate. Then this food mix-up is going to hang out in the actual large intestines for about 16 hours, if not longer. That means this food's been hanging around for almost a day already by the time it reaches the end of the large intestines. End of the large intestines is the anus. Excretion of any waste product, any non-digestible components, and any foreign substances, i.e. bacteria, is being excreted there. So that's the very short and brief view of how you get from mouth through anus in relation to nutrition. But one other organ that we have not really mentioned yet is going to the liver. The liver is important because the liver is going to be where most of your nutrients go once they leave the GI tract. So again, small intestines absorbs into the bloodstream, into the liver is where most go. The liver will process and then send out. But it depends on what state your body's in. If your body is in a fasted state, so in between meals, the liver is going to be exporting the extra stored nutrients that it had. But if you're in a non-fasted state, think you just finished a meal, you're actively digesting, then the liver is going to be storing more of the nutrients because there's plenty in the blood, plenty going everywhere in your body. So the liver will help store excess for later when you're in that fasted state. Because most people aren't eating a meal every single hour of the day. So you've got to make sure you have that storage to be able to release to balance off the amount of nutrients in your blood. So until the next video,